Hello and welcome to episode 159 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. We are now more than halfway through Black History Month, and I really wanted to take some time this month to promote my favorite Black creator in the Disney community. On today's show, I'll be talking to my friend Kiki, who is a Disney Instagram influencer, who hosts the YouTube channel That's So Kiki, and who has worked the Disney College Program and Disney Alumni Program at Walt Disney World. We'll talk to her about different experiences working for Disney and what it's like being a Black creator in a genre that is very heavily white. Like I said, Kiki is my friend, so I wanted to have her on the podcast specifically, but that doesn't mean her experience is the same as other Black cast members or content creators. I did think it was important to give Kiki a platform to share her individual experiences, and I hope that everybody can enjoy them. Thanks for being here, Kiki.
Thank you for having me. I always love being here.
So I'm really excited to have you on the show because I haven't had you on in a while, and you have actually done some more things with Disney in that time. Now, we've talked about your time in the Disney College Program before, but I know you went back. Was that also DCP, or was that just a job as an actual cast member?
It was actually the Disney Alumni Program because they had
Okay.
just brought it back.
So, as part of the Disney Alumni Program, you actually got to work in one of my favorite aspects of the parks, something that I wanted to learn more about, and that is PhotoPass. So, you were working with the PhotoPass department. What did you learn? You know, this was the Disney Alumni Program, so it's part of you being in college and things like that. What did you learn in that role that maybe you didn't learn working in the resorts?
Oh, I learned so much. For starters, the camera. I had never touched a camera before in my life, and I got to learn all the ins and outs of the camera's workings, how to take a picture, how to frame it, how to like focus on people's faces. I didn't even know how to do that. So that was really cool, especially because I'm a marketing major, so that applies kind of to my major. But also, as far as the parks go, compared to resorts, the parks are so much more busy. So you definitely have to learn to like be aware of your space, how to handle those really stressful situations, things like that.
So where were you working most of the time, or did you bounce around to all of the parks?
I stayed most of the time in Magic Kingdom. I only picked up one shift in Epcot.
So what is it like being a PhotoPass photographer in Magic Kingdom where, I mean, I don't know if people are always paying attention to what's going on around them or if they're just staring at Cinderella Castle. As you walk down Main Street USA, it's like every 15, 20 feet, there's another PhotoPass photographer, and all of them have a line that's like 10 families deep. So it must have been just nonstop work when you were doing that.
Yeah, most of the time. Sometimes midday it'll die down a little bit. But most of the time you'll have a line.
And obviously, you have to learn the equipment, but what is the experience like dealing with the families, dealing with the personality aspect of being a PhotoPass photographer? Because once you learn that equipment, you know the piece of equipment and you're fine there. But it's getting the kids to look and smile. It's making sure that this family that might be on their once in a lifetime vacation, getting that once in a lifetime picture in front of Cinderella Castle. What is the stress like there? How do you deal with those interactions? Are most of them courteous? Do you run into situations where you have to deal with problems? I think that would be a high stress gig.
Yeah, it was pretty stressful when I first started, especially because they kind of tell you in PhotoPass you are the attraction. So everyone's there to see you and experience what you have to offer. So that was definitely very stressful for me at first, but I think after you have some practice, it kind of becomes natural to like interact with families and with the kids. And honestly, I always prioritize the kids more than anything. I'm like, okay, let's take a fun, silly picture. Don't you want to take a picture with Tinkerbell? Like that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, working on Main Street in Magic Kingdom, you definitely meet a lot of different people. Some super nice, super happy to be there. Some of them are super stressed out because it is their once in a lifetime Disney vacation. And, you can try your hardest to make it super magical, but sometimes people are a little more consumed by the stress.
And then coming from the world of internet influencing and doing a YouTube channel, having a very successful Instagram account, do you find that that sort of translated to being a PhotoPass photographer? Like your Instagram account teaches you how to get that great shot. Like what a family wants out of that picture because let's be honest, they want likes. That's what they want out of that picture. They want to show their friends from back home their family vacation at Walt Disney World and they want to make them jealous. So do you think your time with the YouTube channel, with your Instagram, helped you become a better PhotoPass photographer?
Yes, and I think being a PhotoPass photographer helps me take better pictures for my Instagram. They kind of worked hand in hand because like the creativity aspect I had from taking my own pictures, but then actually being able to frame and get a quality picture I got from being in PhotoPass.
I never would have thought of that. That was a great back and forth. And like you said, if you're going into marketing, you may never have to take a picture in marketing, but knowing what it takes to be a photographer, knowing what they can do on the ground as photographers, I think it's important for people to understand a lot of different aspects of business. And if you're asking somebody to go out and do X, Y, or Z, now you know a little bit about how hard it is for that person. So maybe they come back with something that you don't necessarily expect, or to give them that creative license. Do you think that even if you never pick up another camera in your life in a professional aspect, that that job helped you in the future?
100%. And I know what to look for in a good picture outside of like being able to give not critiques, but like giving advice to the person who's taking the picture. I can look at a picture and say, okay, this needs to be taken at a different angle, or this needs to have a tilt on it to make it look a little bit more professional.
So, as somebody who pays the extra amount of money to have the photo pass as part of my annual pass, and I know that a lot of people who listen in vacation, they have to make the decision on whether they want to add photo pass to their trip. What would you recommend for people when it comes to making photo pass worth it? Let's say they've already made the decision that they're going to buy it, those making sure those photos come out the way they want them. What would you say is a good practice when they're in the parks?
Um, I would say take as many pictures as possible. If you see a PhotoPass photographer, go ahead and take a picture, because you've already paid for it, so it's definitely worth it. And you can get all the different angles and everything. Also, ride photos and ride videos, I believe, come with that PhotoPass package. So if you come off a ride that you know took a picture and you didn't get that picture in your app, go ask a PhotoPass photographer to find it for you. And that will also make it worth it to have all of your ride pictures because that's not something people normally think of.
That is a great example because let's say you don't buy Magic Bands and you just get the card as part of your vacation, but you bought PhotoPass. Remember what times you rode Haunted Mansion, Cosmic Rewind, some of these rides that have photos, Pirates of the Caribbean, and then go back and you can email Disney and say, I rode this ride at this time, and they'll go back and find it. I know there was a time back when masks were required in the parks that people weren't getting their photo pass pictures and they didn't know why. And it was because maybe somebody else on the ride took off their mask and Disney didn't want pictures going out of people without masks. All you had to do was email them. They superimposed a mask on whoever wasn't wearing one, and then they would give you the picture. So that is a great point to make, that they have all of them stored for a long time, not an infinite amount of time. So make sure you do it quickly, but always make sure you're getting all of your pictures. And like you said, if you're paying for it, do it as much as possible. There are magic shots where they add characters to your pictures. Sometimes you don't get the best PhotoPass photographer. So if you want to make sure you get the best picture of Cinderella Castle, get multiple PhotoPass photographers to take that picture, because those are your memories and you're paying for them. But the other thing, and this is something that I have found, and it's hard for me as somebody who doesn't like to send food back at a restaurant and doesn't want to bother people who are serving me. Sometimes if you're uncomfortable in a position that they ask you, like, you can say, I'd rather not take this picture, or I think I look better in this, stance rather than this stance. You more than the PhotoPass person, and they are perfectly understanding. They have a number of positions that they tell people to stand, but if you feel that makes you look chubby, just tell them you don't want to look bad in the pictures that you're taking.
And they will 100% understand. I actually have done something like that a couple of times where like I'll have one of the family members be like, "Oh, I just want pictures of me from the waist up. Everyone else you can do whatever." And we work with it and it looks good.
Now, I do want to move on to something else because we are still towards the beginning of the year, and there's a lot of exciting stuff happening here in 2024. And I wanted to talk to you about it because I know you're one of those people like me, like we love to be there at the first day of the festival, and we like to, experience these things when they're new. The first thing is later this year, we are finally going to be getting the new version of Splash Mountain, Tiana's Bayou Adventure. We've been seeing all of these teases. We've been seeing little bits and pieces of the ride. So what are you thinking about this ride? Are you excited? Are you just trying to figure out when you're going to go to the parks? Are you going to try to make it the first day?
I am so excited. I was never a huge fan of Splash Mountain. I thought the story didn't make any sense. But Tiana, I absolutely love, and I am so excited that she's gonna get her own ride. And I'm gonna try to book a trip out there to be there like the first week it opened because I just moved to Colorado. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I get to be out there that first weekend.
That's right. So I guess you were going to school in Florida and now you are no longer in school. Is that correct?
Kind of, yeah. I
Okay.
graduated with a bachelor's and now I'm getting my master's. So
So first of all, I didn't realize that you graduated from college. So congratulations.
thank you so much.
Feels like I guess I've had you on the show almost your entire college career because
Yeah.
we had you pretty early, so I didn't even think that you would be done by now. Now, as somebody who's not going to be here all of the time anymore and not going to be checking out the first week of Flower and Garden Festival and Food and Wine Festival, are you afraid you're going to really miss the parks? Or do you think that after working there, after spending so much time as an annual pass holder, that now you're going to sort of build up your, I want to be in the parks again? That it's going to feel special when you get back now?
I will definitely miss Disney World. But I think after being there for so long and after constantly being in the parks, I'm it's like being at home. So I'm gonna take some time away, maybe explore some other Disney parks, but I'll always end up going back to Disney World.
Awesome. Are you going to let your annual pass expire then? Are you going to keep it when you're in Colorado? How are you going to work that?
I actually did let it expire, so I no longer have an annual pass.
Oh, wow. That's got to feel weird after all these years, right?
Yeah, definitely a little different.
So then when you're looking now as somebody who isn't here anymore and you're far away, it's going to take an effort for you to go from Colorado to Walt Disney World. That's not a cheap flight. It's not a cheap vacation. What do you put into your decision-making process about coming back to the parks?
Definitely price. I know Disney park tickets kind of are around the same price no matter when you go. But like hotel prices vary. So I look at those flight prices, that kind of thing. But also I want to come back for Halloween 'cause that's my favorite holiday. And all the Halloween stuff in Orlando I can knock out at the same time. So stuff like that.
That is incredible. So, the other reason that I wanted to have you on the show, and I hope we can have a pretty decent conversation about this is it is Black History Month, and you are one of the rare Black creators in the Disney community. And I think that for some people, it has been really hard to incorporate as a person of color into the Disney influencer community. You seem to have an easier time, but that's from me looking at you from the outside. First of all, how would you feel you've been accepted by other people doing similar things, YouTube channels, Instagram accounts, as a person of color in this white dominated field?
I think typically I've been very accepted. Most people are very welcoming, very kind. And then I also have made some other like Black friends within the Disney community that we kind of band together. But there have been some challenges. Some people are still kind of stuck in the olden days. They're maybe a little racist, a little conservative, that kind of stuff. They're not as welcoming to people like me.
So one of the things that I find when I'm trying to create in the parks is it can be awkward. So you're filming a video in front of a whole bunch of people who are like, what is he doing over there? And you're trying not to let your eyes meet their eyes as they're looking at you and they're gawking at you. But then when you have that added knowledge that there are some people who aren't as accepting, does that make it more difficult, or does it make it easier to just kind of say, you know what, I'm going to do what I want and I'm going to be comfortable in my own skin because it doesn't matter what you think?
It was definitely difficult at first. I remember being super aware of everyone looking at me as I'm trying to like talk to my phone in the parks while they're trying to enjoy their vacation. In the past couple months, I've gotten a lot more comfortable in understanding that not everybody is going to like me. And that's okay because I like me and I like the content that I create. So I'm going to keep creating it.
When we talk about something like Splash Mountain turning into Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and that became a way bigger deal than it should have, honestly. I think Disney made a mistake in creating Splash Mountain in the first place because they already were trying to distance themselves from that IP. And then they made this ride in the 80s that was based on it. And they probably knew this was an inevitability at some point. But now, as you see representation, I know when Courtney and I, my wife, went to Walt Disney World in 2018 on a vacation. We still lived in Arizona. And we had just kind of in a crazy move, we had 2 breakfast reservations. And in between breakfast reservations, we had such a short time that we could only do like a character meet and greet. So we did the character meet and greet with Rapunzel and Tiana. And in front of us, there was a Black family. And the woman, who was probably my age, maybe a little bit younger, upon meeting Tiana, started breaking down in tears because she was so happy because she saw a Disney princess who looked like her. And I know there are places where I can relate to that, but for you specifically, what does having a Princess Tiana mean? Because when we get into these conversations, it gets hijacked, it gets turned into woke, and it gets turned into all of these things. I think what people miss is the joy it brings to people. They focus on the negatives and they don't think about how it makes somebody feel. So what is it like for somebody like you to now have a Black Disney princess?
It honestly is amazing. In 2009, when Princess and the Frog came out, I was 8 years old and I had never seen a Black princess before, aside from Cinderella, the live action one. Yeah, but it was cool that like Disney was starting to normalize having these like diverse characters and not everybody has to be white. So like when that came out, I was like, this is great. And then with Halle Bailey being the Little Mermaid in May, that was something that was like, this is becoming very normalized and it's incredible. I love seeing that like little girls who were just like me when I was younger get to grow up seeing themselves on the big screen and various roles, not just like as Princess Tiana, who ends up turning into a frog for the majority of the movie. Yeah.
Disney does have a weird way of turning people of color into animals in their movies, and we could have a whole other podcast about that. But I think one of the things about Princess Tiana in particular is not only was she a black princess, she was an African American princess. She was based in New Orleans. She had a very specific culture that came behind her. So not only was she looking like the people she was representing, but she had a similar history, a similar background to a lot of people who were getting to see her. Yes, Halle Bailey as the Little Mermaid is awesome, but none of us are mermaids. But there are some of us who live in the South where maybe there are a lot of racial tensions, but you can see somebody who went through a lot of those experiences. It's a very Disneyfied version of that life. But how do you think that also played an impact, that it was dealing with an actual American black princess?
I think it definitely had a good impact, not just for the Black community, but also for like other people to kind of see what it was that we went through. I know there was that one specific scene where she was trying to buy the restaurant and they basically turned her down because she was Black. And that happens in real life. And I don't think that clicked for most people until they saw that in that movie. So I think it was a great thing that they did the movie the way that they did.
That is such a great point, and it was an important part in that film. I think one of the things that I know I like my favorite princess is Merida, and I'm Irish, not Scottish, but I know people there are people in my family who look like Merida, but she does have this very Scottish story that is stuck in a completely different place. So I do think one of the things about Tiana that's so exciting is it's based here. It's more modern. Like, I've been to the church where Tiana and Naveen get married. I think that's such a cool aspect of that. Did you find, as a cast member, I know that a few months ago there was a viral video of some people yelling some very, very offensive things at a black cast member, and luckily they caught it on video, because I think before they caught it on video the cast member was fired for her reaction. But did you find that you ever ran into issues of race when you were working as a cast member?
I don't think that I had an issue specifically because of my race, but I've had families kind of not be used to my race and be a little weirded by it. So like families coming from different countries would kind of be like, oh, like that's different. Or, families even from America, from the deep South that aren't used to talking to Black people would be a little kind of iffy about it. But I was lucky enough to not have like a huge racial issue while I worked there.
No, and I know that when I approached you about having this topic on the podcast, I know that we have never had any conversations about it. It was just, you were Kiki, you were one of my friends. We would meet up in the parks, we would talk on Instagram and on Twitter, but I knew that as somebody who just understands this country and understands all the things that are going on, that it must have been there for you. So I wanted to ask you about it, but in a way that wouldn't make you uncomfortable, obviously. But I know that a lot of us have to realize when we're going to the parks and somebody talks about a privilege, sometimes that privilege is nothing more than just not having to think about it while you're there and just looking like the majority of the other people who are in the parks, and having the majority of every character who has ever existed look like us. And now that it's starting to look more like America as a whole, that's a really, really good thing. And I hope that more people can feel that sense of inclusion that we have been able to feel, because we've had that for such a long time.
It's a very different world for people of color, or it's becoming a different world. It's becoming a world where we're more accepted and we're seeing more of ourselves on the big screen or, in magazines and books, that kind of stuff. And it makes me happy.
And I'm hoping there comes a time where it doesn't have to be like everything is the first this and the first that. And we just really start to not even think about the fact that maybe this Spider-Man happens to be Hispanic and we don't even like care. Like that's where I hope we get at some point. Are there any things about the Disney company and their goals recently, especially to be more inclusive? I mean, inclusion is now one of the keys at Disney, and that took a long time. And it's not just inclusion for people of color, it's people with disabilities, it's men with longer hair, and women with shorter hair, and tattoos, and things like that. Have you noticed the overall inclusivity that they are trying to have at Disney making an impact not only when you work there, but when you're a guest there?
I have. I will say Disney as a company is not perfect with their inclusion, but they're trying to listen. And I think that's what's important, is that they will sit down and they will listen and they will take into account everything that's being told to them and try their hardest to implement something to be more inclusive.
Recently, my one co-host Maz and we had a conversation about how Disney sometimes messes up PR. And one of the ways that we talked about that was when Universal has completely changed their disability access system. And frankly, it is in a not good way. Like it is really harming a lot of people who have disabilities and need access to the parks. But for some reason, Universal like got away with it scot free. Like nobody listened to any of the complaints. They never had to address them. But then Disney, in an effort to try to take away these quote unquote third party VIP tours, which are basically people using the disability access pass, getting paid by people to help them skip the lines. And even when Disney did that, they got a bunch of pushback. So even when Disney does try to be more inclusive, sometimes people view it as them making things harder. And I definitely think the expectations are higher on Disney than maybe some other companies to be inclusive.
Yeah. I think the DAS pass it's a tricky situation. I don't know how they would handle that. But Disney definitely has the expectation of being for everyone. Like everyone says Disney's for all the kids and the kids at heart. So really everyone. Um, so I think that's why they're kind of being scrutinized a little bit more, just because they kind of have that motto.
One thing that Maz said when we were having this conversation was that nobody expects Universal to raise their kids. But for some reason, people expect Disney to raise their kids. And do you feel when you're a cast member, and that is definitely a big part of it, like there are jokes that cast members can make at Universal, well, team members at Universal can make that a cast member at Disney can't make. Do you feel that pressure to make sure that you are not offending anybody? So whether people are coming in with maybe more traditional conservative values, people are coming in who are maybe more interested in inclusion and inclusive language, that you're trying to balance that to the point that it's almost impossible.
Actually, yes, I had a lot of problem with that when I was in PhotoPass. I would like to think of myself as a very inclusive person, when it comes to like pronouns and like things like that. But like in my everyday life, I might slip up and then correct myself. When I am like put in front of a group of people, there's not really room for that error because you might really hurt someone if you slip up. So it's hard to be super, super mindful all the time, be super aware of what you're saying all the time. So yeah, I think I think at Disney there's a little bit more pressure.
So I will say, as somebody who has worked in customer service, there is nothing worse than when you see a boy with long hair. This is coming from a boy with long hair, and you accidentally misgender him, and you feel so bad. And I just hate that feeling. So I totally understand what you're saying. Like, it goes even beyond issues of trans people and anything like that. Like, you can just accidentally misgender a cis kid and it still feels really, really bad, and you don't want to ruin that person's vacation. I totally understand what you're saying. Now, very quickly before we leave, as a Black creator, if somebody is saying it's Black History Month, I am specifically going to go out there and try to find some creators in the Disney community who are people of color. How do you think they can add to their repertoire, maybe add a little bit of color to their timelines? And do you have any specific people that you would like to recommend?
Sure. So, so I love Color Me Courtney. She is huge. She lives in like New York and California. She does partnerships with Disney all the time. Melissa Black is also really, really good. Bippity Boppity Brooke, I believe her name is. She's also really great. I actually have a lot of other Black Disney creators that I follow, so maybe I'll share some of those throughout Black History Month. But yeah, but I would say just kind of be open and looking for it because you'll come across them without really realizing it, but just like pay attention.
All right, Kiki, thank you so much for being back on the show. Congratulations on graduating from college. Such a major step, because you have said on the podcast that one day you will be the CEO of Disney, and you have taken that first step in the right direction.
Thank you so much.
This has been episode 159 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. You have made it all the way to the end of the podcast, so I think we have earned a like, comment, and subscription on the YouTube channel. While you're there, you will see videos from one of the last days of Country Bear Jamboree, numerous visits to Epcot's International Festival of the Arts, and a trip to Universal for Mardi Gras. Next week, Jillian will be returning as a guest on the show. As somebody who lives within a few hours of the parks, I wanted to talk with Jillian about the value of an annual pass. That will be our topic next Thursday on Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Until then, have a great week.